to integer, right? Integer. So, like I said, integer is any number that doesn't have a decimal, no point, no decimal. So, 1 is an example of an integer. If I say print 1, the computer understands. So, if you notice, the difference between how this one is worded and this one is worded is that there is no point, there is no quote. So, you can easily say, let's say for this example, let's say that will print 1 plus 1, it should give you the response 2. You can do that. But by the time you put this, you enclose this in a quote, right? And you try to print, it will give you what you have written there because this is a string, not an integer. Does that make sense? So print 1 plus 1 is an integer. And you can go further, say print 120, it gives you 120. So these are integers. Any number that doesn't have a decimal point, that doesn't have a decimal, is referred to as an integer. So we move to float. We move to float. Remember, I said any number with decimal is a float. That's just the simplest explanation. So let's say print uh, 32.76. This is a float. This is a float. So the difference between a float and an integer is a float carries a decimal point, an integer doesn't carry any decimal point. And the difference of float and an integer to a string is enclosed in quote. It may be a single quote, double quote, or triple quote, right? And we have another data type. We have so many data types in Python, but these are the few ones that we'll be working with now. And as we advance, then we'll be going into different stuffs. So another one is called Boolean. Yeah. So Boolean is either true or false, yes or no, right? One or zero. So Boolean, if I say print and watch this, true. So if I say print true, that's an example of a Boolean, it's true. And the other one is false. It's just the opposite. False. Print false, it print false. And for you to know the data types, what they are, so I will give you an example now. I will come back here and let me copy this one over here. I want to do something now so that it will reinforce the our knowledge, right? So I will say in here uh, type, right? And I will say here type 2. So don't worry about this. As time goes on, you will understand what all these are. They are called functions anyway. They are called functions, and they are used to. It's just like prints. So they are built-in functions in type in Python. So by the time I hit enter for these, right? You see the first one it says print 120. So what I'm really trying to do here is what data type is 120? Data type 120 is an integer and it has come back as class integer. The second one is I'm asking computer what data type is 32.76. It came back and says class float. And here I say computer what data type is true. He came back and says it's class Boolean. And for this one, I said, okay, computer, what data type is this long, are these long characters? And he came back, he said class string. So now, just to go over what we have learned again, the first one is an integer. It contains no decimal point and is not enclosed in any quote whatsoever. The second one is float. It's got decimal point and is not enclosed in any quote. The third one is data type Boolean. It's not contained in any quote. And watch this, it is true. If it is a capital T, if I change that to small letter t, the computer will be confused and it will throw an error. You see, it says name true is not defined. So it doesn't understand. And it says, did you mean true? Because it knows what capital T true means. So if you do that again, it goes through and it says it's class Boolean. And if you put a quote in here, guess what will happen? By the time you go for it, it changes and it say, okay, now it has changed from integer to string. So that is about data type. And these are the few data types that we'll be working with until we get into intermediate and advanced thing and another class. So the first one is data type integer, data type float, data type boolean, and data type string. We have some other types like list, tuple, dictionary, dict, set, binary, dates, and so on and so forth. So as time goes on, we'll be visiting those one, and we'll cover them in details.